Hello and welcome back to my video blog. Two very exciting pieces of news to bring you today. The first of which is that my piece is finished. Here it is, the full score for Towards Harmony, which is the title I have decided on. And you can hear Towards Harmony with the British Para Orchestra and the South Bank Symphonia at the Colston Hall in Bristol on the 3rd of July this year at 8 o'clock. That is the date of the premiere for this piece, the world premiere, and you can book your tickets at colstonhall.org, and the performance will form part of the Fast Forward Music Festival in Bristol, which will celebrate all of the fantastic work that is happening in the area of music and disability. So, yes, please do come along if you are around Bristol on that date. It would be great to see you there, particularly if you've been following me on this journey. Today I've got another member of the British Para Orchestra to introduce to you. His name is Clarence Adoo and he plays the Headspace. Now, I was unfamiliar with this instrument when I first came across it, and Clarence is a phenomenal musician with a highly unusual instrument, and is one of the instruments I found most challenging to write for in many ways in this new piece. And here is Clarence now to tell us a little bit more about the Headspace.
This is how my Headspace instrument works. I have a headset on, and you'll notice at the top and either side there are little boxes which reflect back sound from a sensor that's in front of the computer. On the left hand side of my face is a tube that is really the left hand click of a mouse. So if I was to blow down that tube and put it over an appropriate key, it will sound like this on the flute page. I determine when the note starts and how long it is to be by blowing. Now I could also put it on an automatic play function, which means that there's no fear of me running out of breath. So the other important point is the volume. So if I strike the key at the bottom, it starts quietly, then I can slide it upwards to increase the volume. Here is a rhythmic loop that sounds like this. Now if I blow a shorter time, it will sound like this, which is the same loop, or I can make it even shorter and interact. Every time I interact, it starts at the beginning. I started playing the trumpet through the church. My parents were foster parents, and they took me to church, which was the Salvation Army, and they had brass instruments and junior musicians, and from the age of 6 I started to play the cornet. Enjoyed this very much, that I wanted to do it more and more, and therefore I ended up studying the trumpet at Music College in London, and I loved it so much I wanted to play every single day. I came back from quite a tiring tour of Europe with an orchestra, and my telephone was ringing. There was a young man on there called Courtney Pine, who now, of course, I know very well, but he asked me if I could come along and play in his band that very night. I explained that I was tired, and I gave him some numbers, and I said, if you get stuck, ring me back, which I was hoping he wasn't going to do. Within an hour or so, he rang me back, and I kept to my promise and went along, and ended up being a member of his band for 5 years. life was going very well for me, and it got to 1995. I was driving my car, and it ended up in this fatal accident where the car ended up rolling over, and I damaged my neck, broke my neck, and it damaged the spinal cord, which meant instantly I couldn't have any control over the rest of my body from the neck downwards. This meant, of course, that I couldn't pick up my trumpet. I couldn't press the valves down. I had no tummy muscles to breathe properly. For a little while I was on a ventilator. But it never occurred to me that I was never going to play an instrument again. Because I started from the age of 6, it'd been part of my life, the whole time. And soon there were people speaking and contacting me. One of them was Rolf Gehlhaar, who had been approached to consider building an instrument for me. Rolf was very interested in the different instruments, and he had a knowledge of sound beam, and so he asked me to try an experiment with him where I was in a room and I had to move my head around to break the sound beam and make musical sounds from that. I was enjoying that, and it was great to have control again, but it wasn't accurate enough for me. So I expressed that I wanted to be able to produce one note very quietly, and being able to get louder and have different ways of producing notes and choosing different notes and getting that accurate. So we spent some time together, and out of that came my Headspace instrument. This, for me, takes me right the way back to my college or past college days, where I was playing with people like Courtney Pine. So I need to be able to think about improvising. I need to think about keyboard harmony when Charles goes through and says, 1 4 5 2 6 B. Quick, have you got that down? And so all of my experience, the accuracy of playing in a chamber orchestra is all very, very relevant. So I set off not knowing what is ahead of me, but pretty excited and hope that I can keep up.
Thank you very much, Clarence. Now, a little bit more about that title, Towards Harmony. There's obviously an extra musical resonance, if you like, to the title Towards Harmony, because the British Power Orchestra is really on a mission to prove that musicians who happen to have a disability need not and cannot be excluded from what we might call the mainstream of the music industry. And we also want to encourage more youngsters with disabilities to take part in music too. So we are on a journey towards that ultimate goal of inclusion. But actually the reason I chose the title Towards Harmony was for a musical reason. It's actually to do with the way the piece is structured. Let me just play you the sequence of chords right at the beginning of the piece. So, sorry about the tuning, by the way, we need to get this piano tuned, but hopefully you can hear how those chords are very discordant and quite grating on the ear. Let me just take it apart. In my left hand, B major. In my right, D major with an added ninth as well. So, even if you don't understand some of this terminology, you can probably hear how that chord on its own is pleasant, harmonious. That chord, that's also very nice. Together, they create a real friction in the music, in the sound. Okay? So, at the start of the piece, we hear these chords hammered home 3 or 4 times. About halfway through the piece, I then focus on that lower chord. We arrive at a point, at a landmark, if you like, where the B chord, I change the D sharp to a D, but it is based on B with B in the bass. And I add a ninth onto this one as well. Okay, so that becomes like a cadence or a punctuation mark halfway through the piece, which divides the two main sections of the piece for a listener, really, for an ear. You can follow the progress of the piece that way. And then at the end of the piece, I actually focus on the D major chord with the added ninth. Okay, so the beginning, superimposed on top of each other, halfway through, based on B, right at the end, based on D, the upper chord. And so hopefully this fairly transparent process and structure will really give the piece a coherency for anyone who is listening to it. Incidentally, the ground bass I was telling you about last time is what really drives forward the first half of the piece, and the second half of the piece I will tell you a little bit more about next time, but that's involving a different kind of musical structure and engineering. So, I don't really want to give anything more away than that. I think if you want to hear exactly how the piece works, then of course come along to the Colston Hall on the 3rd of July to hear the British Power Orchestra in action with the South Bank Symphonia, conducted by our leader, Charles Hazelwood. So it would be fantastic to see you there. Book your tickets now online at colstonhall.org, and hopefully see you on the 3rd of July. Thank you to Clarence Adoo and the Britain Peers Foundation. www.britainpeers.org. This video blog was filmed and presented by Lloyd Coleman, edited and creatively supported by Ivan Riches, and produced by Trish Wheatley. The Sound of Disability is funded by the Arts Council of England. Dow Commissions, disabilityartsonline.org.uk.